Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today's topic is one we have talked around but not about, and that topic is Christian nationalism. This is not a new concept. It's not a new threat in general, but it has taken on a new light to the point where some people who 5-10 years ago would have said,
"This is a fringe idea.
Don't worry about it. It'll die out,"
are now cautioning people to be aware of people who use certain phrases, who espouse certain ideas, who are finding themselves sucked into one of these streams that goes directly into a Christian nationalist theology and ideology, because that is where the United States is going. Look globally, that's where a lot of countries are going right now. Okay, quick definition, if we're going to go blandest and most overarching definition of Christian nationalism as a whole, it is the belief that the U.S. should be defined by a Christian identity and that the government should reflect Christian values. The reason it matters now to talk about it, beyond the fact that we are seeing on public television, like broadcast into public spaces like bars and restaurants on the day it happened, memorial services for people who are not necessarily public figures. It also matters because in a recent PRRI study, 3 in 10 Americans either strongly support or sympathize with Christian nationalism, and that support is highest among Republicans. Now, on the other end, 31% are outright rejectors and 37% are skeptics. That 37%, to be 100% honest, is the most concerning group of all of this, mostly because a skeptic is open to hearing about the benefits of something, whereas a rejector is not. So this concept is not fringe in any way. I don't know how many heard about the pastor that got a lot of traction because he's the pastor of some high ranks within the US government and has a church with lots of campuses, and they were talking about how they want to remove women's right to vote. They think that there should be one vote per household, that vote should be done by the man in the household, and the household should talk about who they want to vote for and what they want to vote for, but it should not be one person, one vote. The thing that sounded to me when I saw this in the news where people were calling it a fringe idea and a fringe movement. This is not fringe within evangelicalism. This is evangelicalism. This is what it is. If you've been around this channel for a while, you'll remember me talking about some Facebook groups that I was a part of when I was a youth pastor. I have not left those Facebook groups. I have simply muted them. Most of them are conservative groups. There's been a part of me that's been reluctant to leave them, mostly because I get a perverse interest from seeing what they're talking about, if I'm being 100% honest. So the other day, in just, searching the web, I stumbled across an anonymous post on one of these Facebook groups asking what Christian nationalism is and what people thought of it. And the vast majority of the 92 posts that were there prior to comments being turned off were in support of being called a Christian nationalist, because they were proud patriots and they were proud Christians, and there was no reason that the two shouldn't coincide, and there was no reason that they should be pushing for the entire nation to be Christian. Here is the thing. Other people not holding the belief that you have is not a threat or an insult to your belief, okay? Other people having a different faith background, having no faith background, or having a faith background that's called the same as yours, but doesn't look the same as yours, does not mean yours is wrong. This is a fundamental misunderstanding in many evangelical families right now, which is that the American family is under attack. I've already done videos on where this thought process comes from, how it became mainstream. You can go look at those videos. I'm not going to do that here. The thing here is that just because someone is not like you doesn't mean you're under attack. The only people who think that are the people who have been in the majority for so long, they do not know what it is like to not be the majority. So when you feel like you're no longer the majority, you feel like other people are doing things so vastly different from you. You've got two options. You either see them as the bad person, as the attacker, as the enemy, or you see what you're doing as potentially wrong. You don't actually only have two choices. You have a secret third option, which is just let people live their life. If it's not hurting you, leave it alone. It's not hurting other people, leave it alone. I guess that one gets complicated. Leave that's hurting other people. We'll get to that. The issue here is that evangelical Christians, evangelical families have been told by their leadership, by the news, currently by the administration, that anybody who has a non-traditional family is violating their rights because they don't follow what they believe. That's not what's happening. The idea that anybody who doesn't agree with you is wrong is not a new idea, because there are entire curricula that are taught from a very young age on how to defend your faith. Because anybody who doesn't agree with you, anybody who doesn't believe what you believe, is going to tell you that your faith is wrong. And you have to be ready to defend that, because everything is a battle. Everything in the world is good versus evil, you versus everyone else, because you don't know if they are on the side of good unless they believe the same things that you do. These are the exact things that led us to what happened in January of 2021. Listen, if you tell this story without context to someone who lived under a rock in 2021, and you say that during the process that confirmed an election of a duly elected leader of a country, a group of people, some of whom were in costumes, busted into that place of business, that capital structure, interrupted the proceedings, threatened the lawmakers, and stood in the middle of that place, peed on the carpet, and then thanked their God for giving them the strength to do so, thanked God for being the white light of love and harmony that they brought in with them, these would be things that we would find aggressive and inappropriate in other countries. Here, there's debate about that. Now, you could have the conversation about it's contextual and certain people see things certain ways because it's our country and we don't have the nuance of other countries, and like, that's fine if you're not somebody who supports us going into other countries and changing their laws and getting involved in their disputes. That might be okay for you to have that stance. But if you are somebody who feels like the US military is correct to go all out and rescue those other countries from those types of people, you do not get to then say here, this was fine. But you do, in your own mind, if you believe that your faith is telling you to do so. And that is what so much of this comes down to, people, is they actually do believe that their faith is telling them to do these things, and that God has ordained for things to happen a certain way. And when they don't happen that way, their conviction then becomes that the devil or evil or anyone doesn't agree with them, maybe queer people, maybe minorities, maybe, I don't know, just literally anyone who's not like them, are the reason it hasn't happened, and the ones who are wrong and the face of that evil, then they are these valiant soldiers for truth, and they're on this mission from God. January 2021 is not the only time that we've seen this, and it's not new. This can be traced back to the beginning of our country. This gets so convoluted, right? Because people are like,
America was founded as a Christian nation.
It's not true. I don't know where you went to school. I don't know what government classes you took. That's not fucking true. Like, it's never been true. One nation under God does not mean the Christian God necessarily. It doesn't have to mean the Christian God. And the very first amendment is that the government shall not impede or endorse, essentially, any religion. So no, it's not a Christian nation. It's just not. It was founded as a nation because they were tired of being told what to do, of being taxed unfairly, of being manipulated by people who were in power, did not care about them. I mean, if you want to take it back to freedom of religion, that's fine. They were looking at somebody they believed was taking the Bible and twisting it to fit his own means. So they wanted to and found a nation that wasn't going to enforce any leader's religion upon the people. And here we sit in 2025 with an administration who is creating a task force to investigate anyone who dares to question Christianity. Like, what? Back to the founding of the nation. Since then, there has been this narrative that America is the new Israel, the chosen land that God is going to bless and make prosperous. When you look at the worldview that America is first and America is centric and everything is done through an American lens, don't take into consideration the ways that other countries see America, or the ways that other countries exist and the things that they do and what their histories are and what their cultures are and what that means for them. Or people who say things like, I don't see color and I don't see differences and we're all the same, we're just different variations. Like those ideas, you're trying to make things homogenous so that your personal viewpoint is the standard viewpoint. Those aren't statements that are a bridge or that are peaceful or that are like helpful to anybody. Those are actually offensive statements. And they really do link to Christian nationalism because Christian nationalism links to white supremacy. Much more recent, look at the 80s with the culture wars, moral majority, the conversations that we've had again on this channel about where those ideas of like how bad queer people are and where the idea that like we're coming for your family comes from, and all of that is wrapped into this Christian nationalism. If you have pride in your family, you'll have pride in your nation because American families are what makes this nation great. And if you are an American family, you believe in Jesus and you go to church and you are not queer and you are probably white and you are definitely having children and you definitely have a job, then in the last decade, we've got things like the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, 3 elections that were very, very destructive to the actual moral fiber of our nation. We've got Turning Point USA's campaign to change everyone on college campuses and do so through aggressive debate, not through quiet understanding and a need to get to know each other. This is the thing that has really shifted a lot and has, for me and so many people, become a line in the sand. In September 2025, when that terrible thing happened, that really did shift things for so many of us. We watched people say this person is a great debater, when in reality, so many of us watch this debater who lives for gotcha moments and lives for proving someone wrong. In order to actually interact with someone, in order to actually know somebody and to debate well, you actually do need to be able to verbalize the other person's stance in a way that allows them to say,
Yeah, that's me. I agree. You get me. So now tell me why you don't agree with me.
and if you can't do that, you're not standing on the same footing. There's a power dynamic difference that you are clinging to, and therefore you should not be having that conversation. And I am just as guilty of that as anyone else is. I don't always want to, I usually don't want to actually see where the other person is standing because I feel like it's a threat to me. Now there's some nuance there that we're not going to go into, but when I feel like something that someone is saying is a threat to me, I'm going to be a lot less likely to try to look at what they mean and why. But if I truly want to have a conversation with someone about where they are and where I am, and I want them to really hear me, I also need to hear them. And if I'm not willing to, then I'm not going to expect them to hear me. And that's fine. Like, people don't need to hear me. Scroll on by, y'all. Weird. People like leave comments, which I'm sure I'm going to get on this video if it like goes anywhere, about how wrong I am and how dumb I am and how I don't understand the Bible. I actually had somebody the other day tell me that my opinion didn't matter because I'm not a believer. Like, my opinion on this person didn't matter because I'm not a believer because he always pointed people back to Jesus. Debatable. But also, what? My opinion doesn't matter because I'm not a believer? How are you ever going to make more Christians? What's your plan here? That's crazy work. So now we're watching public memorials turn into political rallies. We're watching people be memorialized and made into heroes when other people in very similar situations are forgotten about entirely. And it's all about what you believe and how correct you are and whether or not you're on the side of the people who feel like they're in charge, who, well, right now are in charge. This goes into the schools where the attempt is to mandate prayer in schools, put Bibles in schools. When you've got kids going to school with restrictive curriculum that only teaches one way of thinking and one way of understanding the world, and everything else is banned. And I know we don't like the word banned and that sets people off, but I worked in schools and I left schools because of bans. That is what is happening. You call it whatever you want to. It doesn't change what's happening. And then you've got those of us who are adults, young adults, older adults, whatever, that are dealing with religious trauma from our childhood, from our young adult years. And we are seeing this all over the place. It's like the most giant flashback we've ever had and can't get away from it. You can't get away from it off of social media because certain groups are taking over some of our social media platforms. Oh wait, all of our social media platforms. I don't even actually know how far this video is going to go because of what I'm talking about right now. Okay, so what can we do? We can stay informed from reliable sources. And when I say reliable sources, if you see an article come up and you're like,
what does this mean?
Do your own research and make sure you're verifying that happen by multiple different places. So like the other day, I saw 2 bronze statues that were in DC for Friendship Week. Look it up if you're not sure what I'm talking about. And I was like, this can't be right? So I looked it up multiple different places, multiple different sides, just to make sure I'm not imagining things. Make sure you are doing your own research and verifying, especially with like the fact that AI articles are everywhere. There's no regulations on that anymore necessarily on social media. So you need to like make sure that what you're seeing is really support organizations in your area and nationwide, whatever nation you're in, that defend democracy and civil rights for everyone. And this is something that has become very contentious. The idea that wherever you are, left of center or center, if you're not far to the right, we should all be sort of banding together and putting aside some of our differences for right now for the sake of, I don't know, preserving democracy. And I don't disagree in most arenas, but I also want to tell you that if something's being asked of you that makes you deeply uncomfortable, that makes you feel unsafe, that is too much boundary pushing for you, then don't do it. Using your voice, contacting leaders, voting, making sure that you're involved in your like local government stuff, that's also really important. It has always been important. It will continue to be more and more important as time goes on. Okay, if any of this resonated, if any of this interested you, I would love for you to hit like, subscribe, send this video out. Algorithms are weird right now, and there's definitely a bit of suppression happening on queer content, and especially on content that is political in any kind of nature. So if you feel like this is a helpful thing, I feel like any of my videos are helpful, send them out to people, share them. I know this is not my typical content, but it is impacting people who watch my typical content. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time, and until then, take care of yourselves and each other.